Hi, I'm John from Just Music. If you like today's show, give it a thumbs up, like, and please subscribe. I'm a new channel. It's my third show. Subscribe, please. And if you're feeling generous, I have a PayPal and the link below. And today's episode is kind of clickbaity. I'm calling it my top 10 concerts of all time. But it also is the top 10 most memorable concerts of all time in my life. And man, I thought it would be easy to do that. So it might go a little over than 10, a little more than 10. Um, we're going to bounce around a little bit and we're going to go back to the 1970s. But first, let me explain this t-shirt that I'm wearing. I bought this t-shirt January 12th, 1978. It was not my first concert. Blue Oyster Cult was headlining the Providence Civic Center in Rhode Island. And the opening band, who I didn't really even know much about, was Rush on their Farewell the Kings tour. Oh my God. I wasn't familiar with Rush at all. And when they opened up, oh my God. I mean, they're playing stuff from 2112, Farewell the Kings. They had a full stage show, flash pots, bombs, a phenomenal light show. And within days after that concert, I ran out and bought Rush, Farewell the Kings, which is probably my favorite Rush album. 2112 is a close second, but oh my God. And then Blue Oyster Cult, they were on top of their game, with Godzilla and Spectres, and the laser light show at the time was just, no pun intended, light years ahead of its time. They did a cover of Born to Be Wild. Blue Oyster Cult did a cover of Born to Be Wild. There were more bombs and lasers and pyrotechnics going off in that one song than an entire Kiss concert. It was mind-blowing. Okay, so that always comes to the forefront for me. That's one of my top 10 most memorable, mind-blowing, incredible concerts. My first concert that I ever went to, which is, historical in my lineage, which I have all these concert stubs here. August 26, 1977, was my first concert ever at the Providence Civic Center. And it was Peter Frampton with opening act Rick Derringer. Rick Derringer rocked the place. They rock way more than Peter Frampton. The highlight for me as a kid with Rick Derringer, the guitar player, bass player, probably two guitar players, they got in a triangle on stage and they were throwing their guitars to each other like you would juggle, and playing it. And I don't know how they did it back then, because they had chords on the guitar. At that time, there was no, that I'm aware of, radio controlled, remote controlled, wireless guitars. And I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And they just threw the guitar and bass and jammed and threw it, boom, 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 boom. And I remember that was just so incredible. Peter Frampton was good. He sat on a stool most of the night. And he was kind of mellow. Peter Frampton, Frampton Comes Alive album is awesome. It speaks for itself. But I remember Rick Derringer more than Peter Frampton in that regard, All right, we're gonna kind of just run through a bunch of stuff here, um, in no particular order. Some of these are from the Providence Civic Center back in the 70s, early 80s, and some of these concerts are from the old living room in Providence, Rhode Island, on Promenade Street. And it was nicknamed the Big Bubble because out of the side of this giant warehouse was this giant protruding plexiglass, massive, probably like 10 feet wide, um, like glass thing, plexiglass protrusion out. And you could actually, like, if memory serves, if you when you're in the building, you could actually like sit a little bit in there. And the living room was the club's name, and it held maybe 300 max, probably closer to 200. And I've seen so many phenomenal shows there. That would be just like a show in itself. Um, so here we go. We're just gonna like bounce off some concerts, and I'm gonna try and do my best to pick a top 10. Here we go. Concert tickets. Ted Nugent with opening act Humble Pie. This would have been the late 70s, so Steve Marriott and Peter Frampton were not with Humble Pie at this time. But Ted Nugent was in his prime, loincloth, swinging across the stage on a rope, jumping. I remember just what the doctor ordered. He's running back and forth on the stage, back flipping, like drop kicking the amplifiers and flipping over. Did Motor City Madhouse, standing on the amps, jumping down, and bombs went off. I mean, incredible stuff. As a kid, man, it was better than the circus. Um, when I was very young too, here's another June 25th, 1982. I remember this day well. I did not have a ticket. I went to the box office the day of the show, and back then tickets were like 550, 650, 750, 850 at the most. And I went up to the box office and I said, "What's the best seat I can get for the show?" And I'll tell you the show in a minute. The gentleman behind the box office said, "How does front row center sound?" I said, "Sold." It was like 750 or 850. It was headliner Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. Scorpions were the co-headliner, and the band Riot, I believe they're from New York, opened up. I had front row center by myself. Oh my God. Incredible. The the Scorpions were the most mind-blowing out of that. I remember them doing Another Piece of Meat where Klaus Meine was on top of the stack of amplifiers, like 20 feet up, and he's singing Another Piece of Meat, and he's just pounding the amplifiers. Incredible stuff. Here's another one, Nazareth. I saw it at the Ocean State Performing Arts Center. Now it's called PPAC, in Providence. And $8.75. November 3rd, 1981. The original Nazareth. I mean, it was mind-blowing. And they had bombs and flashbots going off. And they come out with bagpipes and kilts. Incredible. Nazareth is currently touring, but it's just a tribute band in my opinion. I think the original bass player might be there, but everybody else are, hired hands. I've seen Neil Young a bunch of times. He's always a highlight. Going back to this one here, February 15th, 1983, Providence Civic Center. Mind-blowing. Ted Nugent, Eddie Money. Billy Joel, believe it or not. June 14th, 1980, Providence Civic Center. What a great, great show. Phenomenal. I've seen Queen twice. This particular ticket stub, November 14th, 1978, Providence Civic Center. This would have been the News of the World tour. They no opening act. They must have played for 2.5 hours. Then they did the jazz album tour. That would have been like closer to 1979, and Thin Lizzy was supposed to open up, but they canceled. Phil Lanois had issues, and they canceled. And Queen did another marathon show. But that the first time seeing Queen, the News of the World tour, as a kid, I mean, as a teenager, they had this on the stage, this black circle. Tarps, excuse me, that covered the entire stage, and when they started, dry ice was just seeping out of this circular curtain, and you heard boom boom ch, boom boom ch, and We Will Rock You, and oh my God! Then when the curtains opened up and the lights just blasted out, mind blowing. Electric Light Orchestra with the band Trickster opening up, believe it or not. September 28th, 1978. Yeah. That show there, how can I word this PC? I was under the influence of something. That show was unbelievable. Switching gears, October 7th, 1982, Providence Civic Center. I saw Iron Maiden open up for Judas Priest. Wow. And then after that, after the concert, I went to the Moncu restaurant in South Attleboro, Massachusetts, and I saw this taxi cab pull up before me, a Rhode Island taxi cab, and I saw three long-haired guys with leather jackets coming out of it, and I knew it was three guys from Iron Maiden. So we had dinner in there, and just seated a few booths away from me were now Dave Murray, Adrian Smith, and the drummer, the original drummer, not Nico. Of course, I'm forgetting his name, and I'm embarrassed but those three were there, and I went over to them with my placemat from the Moncu, and I said hi to them, and they had some sinus issues for some reason. Their noses were all red, which is, for October, it was kind of surprising, They were sniffing a lot, and they asked me if I could tell them where the girls were. And I told them, you just came from Providence, Rhode Island, and you're here in South Attleboro. You should have you need to go back to Providence to find your girls. And then I heard after I left, it was a huge party there. Members of Judas Priest and the rest of the members of Iron Maiden. It was the Number of the Beast tour with Bruce Dickinson on vocals. Clive Burr was the drummer. How could I forget Clive Burr? So it was Bruce Dickinson's first tour that I'm aware of. Number of the Beast, and wow. That was a top 10 memorable show. Then here we go. ZZ Top and Loverboy at the Cape Cod Coliseum. The year is cut off. 1981. I loved Loverboy at the time, and I loved ZZ Top. The people were crazy in there, and Loverboy were awesome, but they got booed off the stage because people kept yelling ZZ Top, ZZ Top, and Loverboy was just they were so embarrassed they walked off the stage. ZZ Top came out. They had lasers and bombs and all this kind of stuff. Oh my God. Totally switching gears at the living room. Usually the living room in the Big Bubble on Promenade Street in Rhode Island, Providence. I've seen dozens, and it's gone now. But on the lighter side, Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians, when they first came out, they played there at this 200. You have to stand up. It was a shithole of a place. They were frickin' incredible. Now, switching gears again, 1981 ish was the first time I saw Motorhead. Helix, the band Helix, opened up Motorhead at the Living Room, 1981. And Lemmy was playing the pinball machine in there. And I remember going to the bathroom, and the urinal next to me was um, Phil the Animal, the drummer, standing right next to me, and I think I said hi to him, and he growled at me. This was rock and roll. Oh my God, Motorhead were so intense, so loud that the plaster or the material from the roof was coming down onto the stage and onto the audience, and flakes and pieces, and your chest was just the bombastic bass of Lemmy was just permeating through your entire body. And I remember he came out with a cigarette in his mouth, and his microphone is always a foot higher than he is. And he spit his lit cigarette out into the audience, and he said something like the usual, you know, uh, "We are Motorhead, and we are rock and roll, and fuck you," or something. And oh my God, I'll never forget that. So the Living Room, yeah, I've seen Zebra there. Twisted Sister, I saw Twisted Sister's first tour when they would be, it was right before Stay Hungry came out. And they were playing this, again, 200 people, and they had the whole outfits, the pink chain link fence, and they were, in their first the three albums, Under the Blade, You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, they were heavy, heavy, heavy metal. And then they kind of transitioned into a bit of pop. But my mind was blown when I saw Twisted Sister in the early, early days in a club. Incredible. I saw Zebra there. They got delayed. They didn't. The show was supposed to start at 11 at night. They didn't come on until I think like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they played till like 3:45 in the morning. Those were the days. I saw Wendy O. Williams at the Living Room. Wow, that was a memorable thing. I was, you didn't have a bad place in that thing, but she was wearing hardly anything, and I remember she was wearing this tight. She had these knee-high, high-heeled leather boots, and she had dry ice and smoke machines and these lights off the stage, and she was shaking her rear end in front of this, and this poor guy reached up and grabbed her behind, and she turned around and grabbed his hair firmly and started kicking him in the face repeatedly, as she's practically scalping the guy. She's ripping his hair out by the roots and kicking his face in. Security had to pull her off of him. They threw him out. The poor guy, after they threw him out, she had almost like his scalp, a handful of his bloody hair in her hand, and she threw it out like this, and she looked at the audience and she says, "Here's a warning to any of you MFs out there. This is what's going to happen." And again, like, you can't do that stuff anymore. But that was rock and roll. I mean, I've seen so many. I saw Grim Reaper there, the band Autograph, Y&T. Oh boy, this show is going on a little bit, but hopefully it'll be worth it. I'm going to be wrapping up pretty soon. The Channel Club in Boston. One of my most memorable concerts there was Metallica headlining the Ride the Lightning tour, and Armored Saint was the opening act, and Wasp was the co-headliner. and they canceled Metallica at the last minute because Lars, who was from Denmark, his visa expired, and they took him out of the country or put him into immigration transition, and so Metallica couldn't perform. So it was just Armored Saint and Wasp, and but but James Hetfield was in the audience, and I'm standing right next to him. This was the Ride the Lightning tour. Um, what was that? 80, I should know this, 84, right? 84, 85 at the latest. I'm wearing my jean jacket with my little rock and roll pins all over it, and I had a Three Stooges pin on there. And this James Hetfield, we're the same age, and with his long hair, and we just started talking effortlessly. And he says, "Hey, I see you got the Three Stooges pin." He goes, "I really like the Stooges," and that we kind of struck things up. And I said, "What do you think of Wasp?" And he said, "Bunch of posers." But Wasp was incredible. I mean, Blackie Lawless. This was the original Wasp in, again, the early '80s. With the razor blades and the outfits, and I think they had a little bit of pyrotechnics with fire, and this. I think they spun this half naked, scantily clad woman, and it was just. Oh my God. Incredible stuff. At the living room, my notes: Messiah, Tokyo Blade, Keel, Loudness, Sinful, Raven, Metal Church, Anthrax, Merciful Fate, Suicidal Tendencies. I saw there. I never forget Suicidal Tendencies. It was just crazy. And Mike Murr was hiding behind the stage, peeking his head out. And when he came out, I mean, the place erupted with just, it went crazy. I mean, you had to really look out for your life at that point. Just a complete turmoil and frenzy, and people just slam dancing and going crazy over there. All right. I saw Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich used to play with Tommy Dorsey. This is going way back. In my opinion, Buddy Rich is the greatest, or was the greatest drummer of all time. And I got to see him in 1980, and actually went on his tour bus after the show and got his autograph. And when he gave me his autograph, they weren't called Sharpies back then, but it was kind of like that. His pen ran out of ink halfway through my autograph on my program, which I have actually still. And I asked him if he could write it over again, and he wasn't too happy, but he did. And whenever he finished his show, he would go on the tour bus and smoke massive amounts of weed, and the whole bus reeked of pot, big time. Couple more, and we're going to wrap things up. Another ticket stub here. This was at in Boston, at the Bank of America Pavilion. Every couple of years, all these places, they change their names. It's the Boston Pavilion. It's right on the water. And in 2007, I think it was, I saw the Flaming Lips, and oh my God, they totally blew my mind with their show. Yeah. If you're not familiar with the Flaming Lips, Yoshimi and the Pink Robots was probably I think it's probably their best album. That was a mind-blowing show. I'll never forget that. What else? We talked about most of these. Other highlights. I never saw the original 1970s Ozzy Black Sabbath, but I saw 3 of their reunion tours later on. But their second to last reunion tour was incredible. I was with my cousin Tom. We actually saw the second to last show, and then we saw the very last tour. But the second to last tour, and I'm lapsing on the time frame here, but the original Black Sabbath with Ozzy, that tour was incredible. I saw the Tubes, one of my favorite bands. I've seen them many, many, many times. But the first time was at the Station nightclub in Rhode Island, which is infamous for the Great White Tragedy, where well over 100 people burned to death from pyrotechnics going off. But I saw the Tubes play there with their female singer at the time, and incredible. I think I was in an altered state of mind for that show as well. But I've seen the Tubes many times, but that Station show, which would have been the late 90s, maybe 2000, but probably 1999, 1998, 1999, 2000, the Tubes they're always great. But now, Rick Anderson, the bass player, died a few short years ago. And Fee Waybill still continues to sing with them, but his voice is starting to crack and flail. But their show is always great. Full costume changes. Stone Temple Pilots, when they were on top of their game in the mid to late 80s, I've seen them a few times. But this was, I call it their lava lamp tour. They had two giant, probably 20 or 30 foot lava lamps on each side with Asian rugs, and that concert was with Scott Weiland was incredible. Alice Cooper never fails to impress. Especially back in the 80s, he's still almost as good as when he was in his prime. But those 80s shows, and I think Megadeth opened up for Alice Cooper, the Providence Civic Center in the mid 80s, probably 86, 87-ish. And then I saw Alice Cooper in 88 as well. But when Megadeth opened, I mean, that concert was incredible as well. I think we've covered just about everything. So I said this was the top 10. You pick from the top 10 out of this whole thing. Share with me your experiences in the comment section of your top 3 concerts. Off the top of my head, it would have to be Rush and Blue Oyster Cult and Kiss. I mean, I saw Kiss 1970s. I forgot about Kiss. 1977, I saw the Love Gun Tour, and then 1979, I saw the Dynasty Tour, in which the band New England opened up for them. I believe in the 77 tour, I think the Good Rats opened up for them. And they came out smashing a trash can for their percussion. That was kind of wacky. But as a kid, seeing Kiss was just mind-blowing. And I saw Frank Sinatra, if I haven't mentioned that, I saw Frank Sinatra's very last concert, which I don't think I've mentioned that. I believe it was May 3rd, 1993. It was a Sunday night at Foxwoods that I went by myself, and Frank Sinatra Jr. conducted the orchestra, his son, and Frank Sinatra headlined. And he was starting to slip into Alzheimer's and dementia. And not Rick, the comedian, we'll get back to that, opened up. Don Rickles opened up. And he hazed the crap out of Frank Sinatra ahead of time. And only he can get away with it, I guess. Frank Sinatra came on, and the microphone, ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the board, Mr. Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra comes out in his tuxedo, and the microphone stand was front and center, and he intentionally went to grab for it and missed it by like a foot just to get a laugh to kind of break the tension. He performed incredible, and the only song that he missed the lyrics of all songs was New York, New York. He kind of stumbled on that, and there was not a dry eye in the house after his closing. I'm going to do a whole episode probably just on that show. We're going quite long here, way longer than I intended. I hope you're still here. This is my clickbait top 10 most memorable concerts of all time, but it's probably like what we talked about, a couple dozen shows here. So if you like today's show, check out my other channel as well. I do a review of scotch or a rum once a week, and it's called Just Whiskey without the E. And like, subscribe. If you're feeling generous, PayPal, link below. Hats off to you all, and keep rocking.